All right. Hello, LinkedIn and YouTube. We are live today talking about self-service business intelligence with these great leaders from Pomerol Partners. You're going to hear from Adam Barrie Smith. You're going to hear from Gonzalo Pereira and Scott Duthie. And like I said, we're going to talk about self-service business intelligence. So as you're joining, just let us know what self-service business intelligence tools you're using in your business. And I'm just going to go ahead and give people a few more minutes to join. I see we've got a bunch of people on already, and I'm really excited to have this session. We're going to talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly of self-service business intelligence. Also, let me know, where you're tuning in from. It's always interesting to see the international flavor of those who are joining the sessions. All right, I'm actually going to bring in Scott Duthie, who is the principal consultant. He's head of U.S. pre-sales at Pomerol Partners. So, Scott, welcome to the show.
Okay, how's it going?
Going well. How are you?
Good. Thanks for having us on.
Yes, absolutely. I think, let's get started and talk about who is Scott, what do you do at Pomerol Partners, and what is Pomerol Partners?
Yeah, sure thing. So I'm a principal consultant at Pomerol Partners. I'm originally from New Zealand. We have a pretty diverse crowd at Pomerol Partners. The founders are originally from South Africa, and I think across our London, South Africa, and US offices, we cover, we're pretty much the United Nations. Yeah, I've been with the firm for about 6 years. I originally started with the firm in London in the early days. I think I might have been employee number 6 or 7, but I now live in the US. I'm in sunny Denver, and it's a gorgeous day today. As always, I like to make people jealous of that fact. But yeah, I wear quite a few hats at Pomerol Partners. I oversee most of our project delivery in the US, and then also lead things from a pre-sales perspective, doing a lot of sort of the technical demos of our proprietary sort of products and services. So yeah, that's me.
All right, and maybe you can tell us a little bit about Pomerol Partners and how do you guys actually help clients? What is it that you do?
Good question. So I guess the elevator pitch would be that we help companies simplify data so that they can grow, so that they can solve problems, so that they can optimize what they do. So what does that mean? So we might help a manufacturer solve a problem with production planning or scheduling issues where they're trying to produce widgets, but they have missing components and they can't work out what to make next. Or we might help a trading desk at a foreign exchange desk, for example, with optimizing their pricing plans or something like that. We might work with a retailer and help them understand which customer segments have the greatest risk of customer churn, and sort of where should they prioritize their resources or training. So essentially anywhere where a business has the opportunity to optimize what they're doing, to improve their margins, reduce their costs, and they have data at their disposal that they can use to help solve those problems, we'll get involved. And our area is that, I guess, that end-to-end data supply chain. That's the bit where we get excited.
Awesome. All right. Thank you for sharing that. I know we're going to hear more from you probably in about 30 minutes or so. We're going to have Adam and Gonzalo speak before that. But thank you for giving that overview of what you guys do in Pomerol Partners. So I'm actually going to bring in Adam to talk about self-service business intelligence, kind of what it is and the importance. But thank you, Scott. I'm going to bring you on in about 20, 30 minutes. Okay.
Cool. Thanks, Kate.
All right. Adam, hello. Nice to see you again.
Hey, Kate. How are you doing? Good.
So,
well, I don't have bright sunshine here. I'm in South Africa.
I was just going to ask. So let's start with where you're calling from.
Yeah, and the sun is going down right now. So, but we did have a lovely day. So,
you both mentioned South Africa. I wanted to just tell people if they're interested. I actually have another session next week with Pomerol Partners who. It's going to be about Safari analytics, the Safari industry, Bush analytics, and he's also in South Africa. So I'm talking a lot to South Africa this week.
Yeah, it's a great name, Bush Analytics. You can't get better than that. That's
No, yeah.
That's hit the nail on the head for those guys.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Adam, why don't you tell the audience a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I'm a BSc computer science guy. Started off support and training, and then started building bespoke financial service applications for customers. Did a little bit of computer assisted software engineering, and then eventually went back to a crowd that I knew to do data warehouses. And that basically brought me into the world of business intelligence. Really, just as it started moving from the sort of reporting only type of work into visualization and going forward. And I spent the last 15 odd years in that world. And it's been very interesting to see how user expectations have moved over the years.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know, our topic today is all about self-service business intelligence. Can you just give your version of a definition of what does all that entail?
That's a very broad subject. It's an interesting one. I run a workshop called Govern Self-Service, and we've had some really interesting debates in the workshops about what is self-service. So for some people, it's literally it's a portal where I can go and search for reports and information that I need. For other people, it's not self-service unless I can filter. And then for other people, it's, well, you can't call that self-service unless you're able to actually create the dashboards yourself and go and fetch the data yourself. So there's a huge variety of what is self-service. For me, it's the whole spectrum. And what's interesting, I think, is that I often take self-service to an organization. They're asking me to help them out. And often there's a significant resistance on the IT side. And it's a resistance because of the IT guys are looking at one spectrum and really concerned that users will become very confused or break the data. So it's really tricky, and it's interesting to break through those barriers. Once you unpack that for people, they tend to embrace what self-service is really all about.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know it's gained popularity in the past, I would say maybe 5 or 10 years. I've definitely seen the growth and the interest. Why do you think that is? What are some of the benefits that you see from a self-service perspective?
Yeah, I think, for me, to a large extent, some of the key vendors have really pushed the envelope in terms of creating features in their product that encourage self-service. And in many cases, what I've seen is customers actually not fully appreciating what's inside these products that enable self-service. But I think platforms like this, LinkedIn, media have encouraged business people to really embrace the concept that they can help themselves. And that was, that came through to me hard last year. I walked into a colleague's office, and I hadn't seen the customer for 2 months, and he said, before we go in the meeting, come sit down. And I sat down, and he said, well, my exec came back from their gathering, and they sat me down and said, we will be data self-sufficient in 3 years. Do it or your job is on the line.
Wow.
And that's really, really tough, right? But I mean, I think what's happened is that we look at self-service and say, well, self-service is about, it's about, not having to wait for IT. It's I'm frustrated. I just want to get on and do stuff myself. But it's not that. It's the real issue with self-service, and why execs are pushing for self-service is the value that sits inside there, and I think that it's very much a FOMO thing, fear of missing out concept,
Yeah.
but it's I would say it's not a bad FOMO, right? I mean, I'm not enthusiastic about those all the time, but I think it's a good one. The reality is that there's a huge volume of data. For most organizations, it's sitting there, mostly unexploited. The reality is that IT BI teams are not big enough to address all of that. But the other reality is that those teams often don't have the background, the coalface experience.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
To go and say, let's get creative with this data and ask this question. And I think that's the real power. There's a convergence of technology is enabling, plus people are expecting, they can see the value of this, and you really are seeing today. Well, I am certainly in South Africa, the larger companies being pushed very hard to enable large groups of their users to increase their knowledge of data and how to work with it. So, that concept of data literacy, but B, to actually not leave those features in the software untapped, but actually to bring them to the fore and use those. So that's what we're seeing. It's a really exciting time. It's definitely a change from when I first started with BI. But it is fascinating, and it's lots of fun, because you're just getting more and more people with more ideas, and it's a good time to be in the industry.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's changed, and I think we're moving in the right direction. We actually got a comment here from Jeremy Dennis, who says self-service business intelligence equals semantic model plus intuitive embed reporting tool, in my opinion. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, it's an interesting challenge, a semantic model. So I'm not sure if exec will understand that part of it, but I think that if you look at statutory reports, if you look at the more sophisticated type of analysis, these things are traditionally done by BI, IT. Semantic layers are really key and important. But I think we miss the point sometimes, and that is that there's a lot of free-form investigation that should be happened, and I know there's a lot of resistance to this. Most of my colleagues, at customer sites, their biggest frustration is the spreadsheet, which we could argue is the first self-service, right? I mean,
right.
Lotus 1, 2, 3. Thank you for coming and changing the world for everyone. But the reality is that those business people who are used to working in spreadsheets, they know they have a responsibility to be accurate.
Yeah.
And let's face it, in IT, we tend to lean heavily on semantic layers to protect the user from making mistakes. And while I agree that this is an important aspect, I think it is wrong to always throttle everything completely and not leave some freedom. So I'm always of the opinion of, my curated BI space is sovereign. Yes, needs a strong semantic layer. My sandbox environment absolutely can benefit from that semantic layer, but you want to add the ability to then freeform out of there. So it's an interesting
that's
observation.
Why it's sandbox, right? That's where you get to play. That's where you should be able to play.
Yeah.
One more comment here from Joseph True saying, right on, not waiting for IT. Let me see and visualize my data. Yes, power to the people, man. We want to see our data. We want it now.
No.
I agree, Joseph. Yeah. We've got a question here again from Joseph. Where and how do you see a data catalog tool as part of a self-service business intelligence?
Wow, that's a really good question. That's my so once I do a self-service workshop, we tend to go and do a business intelligence competency center, exercise with an organization. You can't really do a workshop. You actually need to lead them and build this. Normally there's a great deal of excitement, and the business users start working. And the very first massive stumbling block is, where's the data, guys? That's the first question. The catalog is critical. It's just this thing of you've given me all this power. I'm self-serving. I'm ready. Okay, but I don't know where on earth any of my data is. So the catalog is a key part of this.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll have one last question for you before we move on to Gonzalo from Kaushik. He's asked, Adam, do you think the industry is actually looking for a true self-service business intelligence?
I really do think so, Kaushik, and it's good to see you online. Absolutely. I think that if you'd asked me that question when we met in the US, I would have said, I think the features are too early for the industry to appreciate. But in the last 3 years, I've seen a very, very serious requirement for true self-service. Once people understand what it is and how to protect the mainstream part of data reporting, then companies really do take on the true self-service, and they take it on well.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. I think the industry is looking for something that's truly self-service. So, Adam, I know we're going to get you back onto the panel at the end. I know there are a couple more questions that are coming in now. And to those that are watching this live, please continue adding your comments and questions. We do plan to spend about 10-15 minutes at the end to address them, and we'll try to address a couple throughout the sessions. But Adam, thank you. We'll see you in a few minutes. I'm going to go ahead and bring Gonzalo onto the stage, our virtual stage, right? Hello, Gonzalo. You're off mute. Great. Hi. Thanks for joining.
Hello, Kate. How are you?
I'm doing very well. How are you?
Yeah, not bad. Thank you very much. Last few days in London have been sunny, so it's amazing.
We got the whole weather report from across the world. I love this.
Yeah. Now it's interesting days, and now the weather is much better, so it's actually good.
Yes, I'm hoping people are still gonna stay home and
yeah.
I know it's a lot harder when you see the weather so nice, but we'll try to get into code roles and stuff like that. Well, welcome. Why don't you tell people a little bit about yourself, and then we're going to get into some of the challenges and best practices of Selfservice BI.
Yeah, of course. Thank you very much, first of all, for having me here as well. So I'm from Portugal, Lisbon. I moved a couple of years to London. So basically, my background, I started to work in the IT support in my first company, so a major telecommunications company in Portugal. Then after a year, I decided, no, this is actually not for me. So I decided actually to go to a little bit more technical in terms of actually code development.
Okay.
So started to do development, normal development in terms of applications for several customers. But then in the middle of that experience, I was actually introduced to the BI world. Mm-hmm. And since then, basically never left. Since I entered, so basically stay there until today. What I do today at Pomerol Partners, at the end, I help here in the UK office, more in terms of the delivery of our projects, try to engage with our customers in terms of more pre-sales, what they need, what they actually are looking for to enrich their platform or to enrich their data. So it's more an interaction with the customers and so an interaction with my colleagues to learn and to try to give a little bit of my knowledge that I've been gathering all these years, basically.
Yeah, that's great. I think so. You started in code and you saw business intelligence tools and you said no more code, or do you still do some coding?
No. I still do coding. I still do. I actually really enjoy the part of the coding in terms of the ETL part. I really enjoy it. It was funny. So the way I entered BI was I was doing a project, but then basically the project finished, and my boss basically came to me with a book of BI and say, okay, we have this project in, let's say, 2 weeks. So read the book and get ready. So it was interesting. So yeah, so it was actually literally how I started in the BI. But then I enjoy it, actually enjoy it a lot. It still gives me a little bit the mix of the excitement in terms of checking the data, what actually the data is telling us. It's not, let's say it's not a boring job. It's not the same every single day. So it actually pushes, challenges you to try to understand the data from different business. So you will have also a little bit of code in terms of to try to work with the data to see actually how everything works in that company or in that organization. So
yeah,
it's not a boring job, definitely.
Yeah, the coding background is definitely helpful. I've actually gone the exact opposite route where I started with business intelligence software, spent about 5-6 years with that, and now I'm learning programming and coding, and it is different, but I like them both.
It helps because, in my opinion, the coding gives you that logic sometimes that you actually need.
Yeah.
So, and gives you a different perspective sometimes how you can actually build some of the, or not how you can build, how you can solve some of the challenge. I'm not saying that is a perfect world, of course, but it can help.
Yes,
at the end.
Absolutely. So Adam spoke, about the self-service business intelligence, what it is, how it became so popular, and some of the benefits. So I'd love to hear from you. What are some of the challenges of using this self-service business intelligence? I'm sure you've got a couple.
Yeah, it's an interesting topic because it's actually fun. Because I like to before actually going to the challenge, I like to say when I having a conversation with the customer. First of all, it's actually go to the basics and try to understand, in our view, what is actually the real purpose of BI. So the whole logic of BI is basically the single source of truth. So to have a place where we have all the data of the organization and everyone sees the exact same thing. So avoiding those awkward meetings, everyone goes to a meeting, then we have someone that has the data from somewhere and says we have 5 million of sales, and then other person from someone else says, no, I have 3 million.
Yeah.
So to avoid that awkward conversation, we need a single source of truth. Now, the challenge, I like to separate them in 3 categories. The people, we have the process, and also the data. So the people is more in terms of, Adam spoke about this, is more what is actually self-service for them? What do they mean when they say, I want self-service?
Yeah.
Because lots of people is self-service in reality just need of going to a website. For instance, they have the different dashboards and just use those dashboards. That's it. Others will say, no, I want to go to the dashboard and I want to have the possibility of searching by region, by product, or by salesperson. That's self-service as well.
Yeah.
And then you have other people that will say, no, I want to build my own stuff. So this is the part that's the main challenge. We need to know our audience, our target, what they actually expect when we say we are going to implement self-service. The other part is the process. When we create a self-service environment, we need to have some process. We need to make sure people follow some rules. Because if we don't have those rules, what will happen is we will continue to have the same problems that we used to have with the Excel. But instead of the Excel, we are using a more expensive tool.
Yes.
So basically, we didn't improve. We are just spending more money, but with the same result.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we also don't want to kill the people with lots of process. Basically, they will spend 2 or 3 days following the process.
Yeah.
So we need to have a balance there in terms of the rules, what people can do, what they cannot do, and how they can actually do it. And then is the data. How mature is actually the data in the organization? Because we see lots of people, or in this case, organizations, saying we want self-service, we want predictive analytics, but they don't even have still the basics yet. Yeah. They don't even know where their sales data is, if the data is clean, if they have someone asked, and Adam was saying, do they actually have a data catalog so everyone knows where they can get the data?
Yeah.
So these are the challenge. Of course, we can have more. It depends on the organization, what they believe, and all of that. But at the end, they will all fall into these categories. And definitely, these are domains that we need to understand that they are there. And then is how can we actually solve them?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you made some really good points. And one of the challenges I've seen, let's say the data is perfect. There is one golden source system, everything ties out, the data is clean. I think there's still a challenge with self-service business intelligence, and that comes with data literacy. We actually had a question here on data literacy from Michael Mahoney. I'm going to go ahead and pull it up for you here. So he says, do you consider data literacy a true language like English or Spanish? Where do you need to learn data? Where you need to learn data literacy, like learning a new language? Because if you're not speaking the same language or you're not understanding what the data is, and you have this powerful business intelligence tool or software in your hands, you can potentially develop charts and graphs that are inaccurate because you simply weren't sure what you're working with. That can lead to wrongful decisions. So I wanted to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, it's completely true. And that is the part that we fall under the category of the people. We need to know our audience, so our target users. Because the thing is, we might have the perfect world in terms of, okay, we have all the structure to have a true self-service. Everyone can create what they want and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But then they don't know how to create it in terms of they don't understand the data. They don't understand the correlations.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why the process will be good in terms of, okay, the process will try to fix that situation in terms of we need to give training to these people in terms of not just technical, but just also the part how they can actually read the data, what actually makes sense, what doesn't make sense. So at the end, it's basically teaching them a new language in terms of the data, how everything works. And then, of course, some of them will want also to include some more technical part to start creating their own stuff. But the data literacy also, it shouldn't be included only in the self-service.
Mm-hmm.
Even the people that just want to go and read the dashboards that already exist, they need to know what they are reading. because they don't want to create anything, but if they don't understand what they are seeing, what's the point? What decisions are they going to make? So data literacy is definitely, I know is a very hot topic now, but is important. It's important in the way people actually need to understand what they are looking, what the numbers are actually telling them, what's the trend is explaining, so they actually can make the decisions.
Yeah, I think it kind of works both ways too, right? We need to educate, I guess, the business on data literacy, but we also need to educate those that are working with data on business concepts and context and the domain expertise. So I think teamwork is key here.
Yeah. It's always one of the things that it is very important always is the training that we can give to our customers.
Mm-hmm.
Because at the end, we are building complex solutions. Because it's not just building like a chart or like a bar chart or a table. We are building complex solutions with different algorithms behind to deal with the data, to add some logic. But then those people need to understand how to read that data at the end. That is actually the very important part.
Absolutely. And we got a comment here from Jeremy Dennis. Critical to create a data strategy that includes data literacy, master data management, and data governance. Yes, Jeremy.
Yeah, definitely. At the end, when we talk about data and people, everything is included. It's all in terms of how do we manage our data? How do we work with the data? What is actually our strategy on the long term in terms of bringing new data source, bringing what people call the unstructured data? How are we going to join all that information together? We need to have process that allow us to create that business logic behind. And then, of course, we need people to understand how they can actually read that data and collect the information that they want to do their jobs at the end.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, there's a question from Todd here. Just wanted to show it to you here. What's the difference between a company that thinks it has self-service business intelligence but doesn't, and a company that truly has provided and engaged with self-service BI?
So that is actually very relative. So because if they think that they have self-service, so it depends of the level. Let's be honest as well. It depends of the level of self-service you want to implement. I can give an example. I did a very big project a couple of years ago. So we just started with the implementation. Then we built the dashboards, blah, 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 all that thing. Everyone enjoyed the different regions, Portugal, US, South Africa as well. They were all amazed with the stuff. But then we actually had one office in Canada that they were saying, okay, this is good, but for us it's not enough. For us, we actually need our own people to start creating their own dashboards. So it's not just what you guys actually bring, because we have contracts, for instance, that we need to have reports that we need to send every single day to customers. So, and these we had basically, we actually had to create a strategy in terms around training to actually go to those people, give actually proper training, not just technical, but around data, how the data models are actually working the company, how the data warehouse is structured, the data catalog, where they can actually get the data. Yeah. And believe it or not, that country, in some way, of course not entirely, became actually independent. All their data part, basically, they were actually the ones doing the development. Of course, sometimes they will need to go to the IT to get some other parts that they needed. Yeah. But the majority of the reports they were doing, it was actually created by them. So for them, that was actually self-service. Then we saw the other office. They were just interested in seeing what we actually built. They weren't actually, but for them, it was also self-service. Why? Because if we compare what we gave to them and what they used to use, there's a big difference. So for them, they actually feel that that was the true self-service. So it depends of the customer expectations as well. It's difficult to say just because you don't create anything, you are not doing self-service. So it's not very
wide spectrum of self-service.
Yeah, of course. I think at the end, we need always a balance, because we will never have an organization that will do always, let's say, creating everything from scratch or just have the dash. We will have always a mix. It's not just going one or two. It will be always a mix. And that is, in my opinion, the true self-service is the ability of providing our users what they actually expect, not impose to them, this is what you need to do. So you have this aspect, we have process for these aspects, and you need to use it.
Yeah, absolutely. Getting the idea from what exactly they're looking for, what they see as self-service and delivering. Before I let you go, last question, and then I know you'll be back for the Q&A at the end. And I know we covered a little bit of this already.
Yeah, probably.
Practices for self-service BI.
Yeah, so best practice, or I would say it's more in terms of advice based on my experience. I think here it's more in terms of, if you are trying to implement in your organization something around self-service, don't start anything until you actually know your target audience. What do you want actually to give them? Speak with your users, understand what they are expecting, understand what they actually mean when they say self-service. That is a very important part. The other one for me is, you need to have a stakeholder, a person in your business that basically agrees with your plan, and it works almost like a salesperson in the organization.
A champion. That's the term we used to use.
Yeah, correct. So
Yep.
that is also very important because at the end, he will be the face of the project. He will be the one that will sell that strategy to the organization. Because it doesn't matter for you to have the process if you don't have acceptance, or even if people don't know that you exist. Or when I say you, the team and the structure.
Right.
And then, of course, in this case, we need to create a robust process that needs to be balanced, that will basically merge a little bit the IT with business people. That is always a big challenge. But at the end, we need to have some kind of balance between them. Because at the end, the main issue is today, in today's world, we have everything is changing every second. So we need to adapt. We cannot wait 3 years or 3 months or even 3 weeks for something. So we need to have something in place that will allow the user to start creating something, but then goes through, let's say, like a peer review where they can sit with the IT to check if what they did is correct, if not, and if it is good enough to go to the other people. At the end, is more about creating the quality that will be informative to everyone else. I would say it's basically the ones that I would pick in terms of advice or best practice.
Great, thank you so much. This has been very helpful. I'm gonna bring you back in about 10-15 minutes after I have a discussion with Scott Duthie. But thank you so much, Gonzalo. We do have comments and questions for you, so we'll address
them. Thank you very much.
In a bit. Thank you. All right, Scott, good to have you back. Hi.
Good to be back.
What are your thoughts so far on the discussion? Are you agreeing with Adam, Gonzalo? Do you share similar views?
Yeah, no, Adam is a wise man. He's been in this game for longer than me, and what I really like about hearing someone like Adam speak about this is, he has a really solid, almost computer science kind of foundation, and so he comes from it. My background is more in business, and so we actually we end up in the same place, but kind of probably analyze this and come at it from quite different angles. So yeah, it's great having people like him and Gonzalo on the team, because we're all extremely different experience. It's cool.
Yeah, those different perspectives are always good to have. So I'd like to hear you talk about self-service implementations that have failed, because as humans, we love to hear about failure and what happened, why did it happen, and how did you overcome that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think just before we talk about that, something that Adam, or was it Gonzalo, mentioned earlier about it was Adam, about the data catalog. I mean, it always amazes me that some of these things, in the early days of Selfservice BI, we kind of weren't using data catalogs, or the main vendors weren't promoting these. They weren't promoting like data literacy initiatives in the organization. And now these things seem so obvious. I look back at some of the early self-service projects that we were involved with, which weren't amazing successes. Some of these data catalogs, data literacy initiatives, better in-app communication between self-service users. Like, this is a new thing that's starting to become really big, and it seems so obvious to enable users to communicate with each other. Like, of course you need a Slack channel on the side so that users can share and discuss. Hindsight is an amazing thing.
I know, I was gonna say, I think we would have started with it, but now we're here.
I know. But yeah, I mean, in terms of talking about the failures, I could tell you about more than a few. I mean, one thing that's interesting is the industry, the consulting industry, we've had to adapt and change a lot really fast as well. And, we're almost not at fault in this as well. We're as complicit as our clients. I think I think a few years ago, we didn't necessarily have this experience and foundation around how to advise on self-service, and we've all been on this learning journey together. And we're significantly better placed now than we were a few years ago. But one project that actually comes to mind when I think about this was with a manufacturing client, and they had a very strong history in Cognos and using ClickView as well. So, very centralized, very much IT controlled. And the initiative was to create self-service. But I think the intention was really good. So IT had a huge backlog. They took a long time to turn anything around. And the idea was, well, if we can have people out in these different business units who can actually take, some tidy data and build their own reporting, it'll take the pressure off IT. It'll help us get information to the decision makers, quicker than it's currently happening. But what seemed to happen is there wasn't much of a plan. It was sort of open gates, and so very quickly, there were no guardrails in place and sort of governance and structure to control how users were using the data, building reports, publishing information. So all of a sudden, you get this content explosion, and this is something we see on a lot of self-serve implementations that maybe don't have a solid game plan. We get this explosion of content, and then it very quickly gets out of hand and becomes hard to kind of rein it back in. We often go from this world of we've got 10,000 Excel documents in our company, and we want to push that all into a funnel and bring it back to this nice, tidy, centralized one version of the truth.
Yeah.
And then sometimes we try and implement self-service, and we end up just turning the funnel upside down, and then we end up with 10,000 sheets or views, in a BI application, and we've kind of got the same problem. And so, the failures I've seen around that really just come back to and this is something Gonzalo talked about, is before starting out on a self-service initiative, it's kind of defining like when we say self-service, what are we actually trying to create? Like, what does that mean for our organization? So getting that game plan in place and the structure and governance, and the guardrails essentially that are going to make a success of your initiative.
Yeah, absolutely. You reminded me of something I witnessed personally. We use the self-service business intelligence tool, and every time we taught other people how to use it or trained other professionals, you'd see they would build 10 or 15 different dashboards, publish them to the server, and version 1, version 2, version ABC, and then you've got all of these dashboards, and you're not really updating them with their data because you've just created a new one, and then people go in and use an old dashboard that hasn't really been up to date, or other versions. Yeah, that can become a real mess. I've seen that firsthand. Definitely have a game plan.
It's scary. There's been quite a few projects or clients that I've been involved with where we might have come in 6 months after the business intelligence software has been sort of up and running and thrown out to the masses. Yeah. And we've come in to just, do a bit of a health check and maybe give some advice on how to clean things up. And thousands of reports, applications, sheets, call it what you want, depending on what tool you're in. But it's stressful stuff trying to work out how to rein all that in. Don't let it happen in the first place is the advice.
Absolutely. We actually got a question here from Amgad Singh. Okay, what are your thoughts on availability of business logic while developing reports?
Good question. I mean, availability of business logic when building reports. I mean, I've seen this is one area where things can get really messy. So if you're just providing maybe a data warehouse with clean data to your users, and they still have the ability to take that data and and decide how they're going to calculate gross margin, then that can cause a lot of issues. So we sometimes still have the problem of many versions of the truth. What I've seen being really effective is the use of sort of master libraries for dimensions and measures that are commonly used, so that your self-service users can at least start with a essentially, it's almost like a piece of master data, but a master measure or calculation that lives in a library, and it's sort of the one version of the truth. And maybe they have the ability to actually break that link and make a modification to it, but they're at least starting with our company's, dictionary definition of what gross margin is, so that trying to use centralized master libraries for business logic, I've seen that be very, very effective. And I've seen the data catalogs are improving a lot, and I can see at the moment, master libraries for dimensions and measures don't seem to be very visual or interactive. And I'm kind of hoping that that's where we're going to go, where it's more of a bit more of a visual shopping exercise for dimensions and measures, instead of just having, a list of 1,000.
I think that'll be better once we can update the visual, when we can actually visualize and see how all those terms go together and get the same understanding, for example, of what is a customer, right? A lot of times that's caused confusions in companies of how do we actually define somebody who's a customer, and there's discrepancies between the way that data professionals look at it, the way that business professionals look at it. So definitely agree. Very important. We've got another question here from Hari Shankar. It says, hi, what are the best practices for data literacy? Is it a good idea to add notes, annotations, or video links to dashboards explaining the details?
Yeah, I mean, when appropriate, I guess. I think the first step to releasing some content to an audience is often people rush towards sort of documentation. I always find before those users are even allowed to look at that or interact with it, they need whether it's a live session to walk them through it. We do a lot of embedded videos, so they open a BI application, and the first thing they see is they push play, and it's like, hey, welcome to your new report. This is what this report does. This is what value it generates. This is how you use it, and try and clear any risk of misunderstanding right from the beginning. And that's kind of a new thing as well. We used to document our scripts and business logic that sat behind dashboards and reports. We're now using a lot of tooltips, a lot of embedded videos. We're using a lot of BI teams or sort of BI consumer groups in an organization are using Microsoft Teams and Slack channels. So, we're starting to get all these tools talking to each other, and, we'll have a library of how-to videos and intro videos, and
I think that's very important. Short video, hover here for more information on how to actually use the dashboard is very helpful. I know we spoke about the failures of implementing self-service BI, but do you have a success story that you want to share with us of when things went well and what happened there?
Yeah, definitely. We actually have one of our first BI customers or clients in the US is actually a manufacturer and wholesaler of wedding dresses. Really interesting company for us, especially. Pomerol really comes from a finance investment banking background almost right in the beginning. And it sort of just shows how much we've evolved, that we're now working across a lot of industries, and one is with a wedding dress manufacturer, but great client of ours. It's hard to point a finger on exactly what has made them successful, but there's a few key things that come to mind. So the first one, and I think almost the most important, is this idea of executive sponsorship for the initiative, and just really strong leadership. So there was and there still is this ambition or this overarching goal to create, data-driven decision making, which is a bit of a cliche, but to create and promote data-driven decision making throughout the whole organization. And that came from the CEO level. So yeah, I think having that initiative being driven from the top is really important. What we sometimes see in an organization is that one business function is like way ahead of the rest, trying to create their own little business intelligence environment, and it can work, but it's like you can only get so far swimming against the tide in your little silo. Like the things get so much easier if from the top the CEO is saying, right, we're going to be a data-driven organization. All of a sudden, resources become available. The right projects get prioritized. The right people are getting hired. There's investment in the technology to support it. And if you're fighting against a strategy that's not in line with what you're trying to do, that's tough. So yeah, I think that executive sponsorship is probably the biggest thing that I've seen sort of promote success of self-service or new sort of third generation BI environments. And then I think another thing that was really important is this concept of setting up the BI team and kind of really clearly defining like what this BI team is and what their role is. So sometimes we see organizations where the BI team is really just a couple of people who are part of IT. And then sometimes the BI team is actually, it's that business function that took the lead. Maybe it's like sales ops, and they've got a few people in sales ops and they've kind of become the BI team. When you actually carve out a BI team to sit in the middle of IT and sales ops, they then become really effective because they not only listen to sales ops to get the business requirements, they actually help them refine those business requirements. And then there's a big gap between John, the sales rep on the road over here, and Greg sitting in IT who's controlling the infrastructure. There's a huge gap, and so having this almost like SWAT team in the middle that can be the bridge, that is just, I've seen it be really, really effective. They become accountable for the success of what the business is looking for in terms of reporting and information. And the responsibility is really clear. It sort of lies with them. They're accountable and focused. They're not sort of doing their sales day job, but trying to do this on the side. That's their focus. So yeah, executive sponsorship and just really defining who that BI team is, what their role is, and making someone responsible for delivering on it. That's really effective.
Yeah, Tim says feels so seen right now. So you're relating to Tim. He feels seen with what you're saying. So thank you, Scott. At this point, I'm actually going to bring Adam and Gonzalo back into the stream so we can answer a couple of questions. Hello, guys. Hope you.
Hello. Hi again.
Your teammates have a conversation. All right, the first question is from Renee McGregor. I'm going to go ahead and pull it up on the screen here. So she says, question for the whole panel. How important is collecting, knowing, and using your metadata to the success of self-service BI, and how can you assist in understanding and growing self-service in an organization? So who'd like to start off?
I can start. Then the guys will complement my answer. In terms of the data, it's always important to actually to know what we have, how to collect them, and how we can actually display that data to our audience. So we will be able to give self-service, or we will be able to use the data if we know where it is, if we know how we can collect it, and how we can actually gather that information transactional data, metadata, any data at all, we need to understand what is actually possible and what is actually the dream. So most of the times is we see when we go to projects, people say, I would like to build this, this, and this. But then when we start asking, do we have that data? Is the data viable? Is there any place where we can see it? Not really. Okay, so that's the dream. So let's start working with what we have. So that's why it's actually important to understand what we have available. In terms of how we can help and assist the organization, I think it's all about also the users. How interactive are actually our user base in this self-service world? Are they actually engaged based on their expectations? Do we need to provide more training? Do we need to provide more personal advice or assistance? So this is the part that, again, falls all under the category. We need to understand their expectations to have everything in place so we can assist them in this roadmap in this case.
Yeah, I think the metadata is it's the lifeblood of a business intelligence competency center. So this is I think it was Gartner who coined this term, but if you're running self-service as an organization, you need metadata not just for understanding what data you have available, but critically to understand how people are behaving inside that environment. This is part of return on investment. It's the ability to say, we've invested all of this time. We have gone through this process of onboarding our users to do certain types of self-service. Are they doing that self-service? This is a critical question, because it's only when you can visualize that and see that and work it backwards that you can really truly say, I'm being successful in my project. I think the one of the big issues, and Renee and I have discussed this along a lot of times. One of the big issues is when you onboard a person into a self-service environment, a big aspect of what happens after this is coaching, and you really want to have mechanisms in place where the system will feed back to you and say, this is the behavior of this person, and I can see they're getting into trouble. So I'll give you a practical example. Let's say they go and start loading 100 million rows of data. Now, you would hope that your engine, your BICC engine, has got an alert there that says, when a person has been on self-service training 2 days ago and they already managed to find their way to 100 million rows, then this is someone that you want to maybe go and have a conversation with and help. This is why metadata is a key part of it.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that, and I think if you look at what we do in the web design world and how much we analyze every mouse click on a public-facing website, I mean, that is absolute standard practice, and we should bring that methodology of analyzing that and optimizing what we reveal to our audience. We should bring that into business intelligence. Yeah, I've definitely seen examples where we've gone and set up some better metadata monitoring of BI applications that have been in production for a long time, and we can see like no one has looked at this sheet or report for a year. It's just sitting out there, So the ability for that user metadata to just drive way better content creation, get rid of all the rubbish that no one's using. Yeah.
Absolutely. I was laughing, Scott, because I agree so much with you. I remember spending hours and hours building some dashboards that, I was told are really, really in demand. And then when you analyze the users and the usage statistic, you see that you're the only one actually going in there. So most used by Kate. Okay, great. Very nice. I'm glad I made this. And I guess, you do that assessment of maybe there's that education piece that's missing, or training, or how to actually use it, or making it available for people. But thank you, guys. Well, we do have another question here. It's a little relevant, a little of the same, but as self-service BI requires technical knowledge of the tool, what are the chances that users with non-technical background would be comfortable with self-service? So I guess picture a business user who's given a self-service BI tool.
Yeah. I think the thing to be aware of today is that the artificial intelligence is a key factor in the world today. It's being used to do a lot of predictive and complex data mining, etc. But at the same time, it's also being used inside self-service tools. So what we see today is that we have tools that basically work on behalf of the user. So I'm a business user. I have a level of data literacy. It may not be the level that I would like it to be at. And yet when I work with the tool, what happens is the AI built into that tool will actually advise me and help me work. So the tools that I work with, what I always enjoy doing when I'm working with a business person is to build a chart the way a business person thinks. A business person does not think, oh, I need a scatter plot, mainly because they don't know what a scatter plot is. But the business person says, you know what, I really wonder if there's a correlation between this margin amount that I've got over here and the number of doctor visits I've got over here. So let me put those two measures together, and then let me drop the doctor on top of those two to see what happens. And of course, the tool is smart enough to say, oh, this is ideal to produce a scatter plot, and it does it for you. And I think that's the level that the software is lifted up to, that really helps with exactly the question you put. It's a really exciting time to see this materializing.
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe someone else can comment on this next question of how helpful can voice recognition be in self-service BI? And I know, Adam, this touches on AI and the innovations that we're seeing in this space. So what are your thoughts on this?
You're asking me again?
Come
on, Scott. I'm sure this is your one.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't actually know. I mean, I've seen a lot of, I've seen more work or more tools that tap into natural language generation.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's been around for a while now in a lot of the BI tools. So the idea here is that, this is auto generating some qualitative analysis. So maybe I want to look at Austria, and I want to look at, sales history for the last year. This is natural language generation to produce a narrative that explains what's happened there. And I still think that's a bit untapped. I see it used a little bit, but not used as frequently as it could be. And then I think verbal or voice interaction with your BI tools is almost a step after that. I feel like we're going to get there, but it might be too early. I don't know. I mean, what do you guys think? Integrating Siri with your BI applications and asking questions. I mean, Siri can turn those questions into text, I'm sure. So why not? We can't be that far away.
I mean, I think if you demo it, you will see the audience every time is just everyone watches too much TV, right? I mean, it's it's really exciting. But the reality is that for probably a small audience, voice recognition is a key way of interacting with computer systems, full stop. And we will see that happen. But just asking questions and getting results back is it's that beginning part of self-service, and I think it's for me in self-service, the real part is when people start helping themselves to data, to imagining new things, not asking questions of what's already there.
Yeah, the closest thing I've seen to that was at a Click event when they were demoing, I believe it's called Insight Bot, where you could type a question, right? What are the sales for 2018? And I could compare that to 2019. And I think we're definitely on the way there. We're not sure how far off, but I definitely do think we will see that. I know we're a little over time. Do you guys have time for one more question?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's take a vote. A question on governance or your favorite reporting tool. Raise your hand for governance. Okay.
I knew Adam would pick governance.
Sorry.
So, what is the relevance of governance when it comes to self-service BI?
Oh, it's everything, man.
That is all yours.
It's everything. Governance for self-service BI is the petrol pump at a petrol station. You can imagine the chaos if you didn't have a petrol pump, right? People coming with their own bits of rope and bucket, and if you didn't want to smoke around a petrol station, if they're doing it with buckets, you really don't want to. Your governance is the glue between IT, BI, and business. It's it's that agreement, and it's this framework of how the two parties will work together, so that business does not get upset when IT comes and says, we appreciate your interest in this data, but you can't load 2 billion rows at 10 o'clock in the morning. That's the part that you want to preempt through governance. Governance is not something that is in a book somewhere that you can pick up and put down. It is a fundamental part of your company's culture, and you're going to need to go through a process where you unpack what the governance means to your team in terms of what you're trying to build in terms of self-service. And what that does for you then is it tells you which parts of products you want to turn on hard and which ones you want to turn down, and it really plays a massive role. For me, it's a very, very central aspect of any self-service exercise.
Yeah, absolutely. I love the analogy of the gas pump. Very, very easy to relate to, right? Because you can picture a gas station without that, and you can just see a mess of things happening.
Yeah, but it's more like everything in the world. We need some governance and some rules how to do the stuff. And especially when we have different people interacting with different mindsets and different types of training, we need some guidelines, some rules, so they can actually follow and make sure everything works together and everything glues together. Because at the end, if we are not able to put some kind of rules and governance or process between how both teams are going to speak with each other and to work with each other, it will fail miserably. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you get the blame game, right?
As soon as you start that game, it's better to stop, because
my worst experience in self-service is when IT says, "Here's self-service." They throw the software at the users, and then they try and take responsibility for what the users do. I mean, this is a tragic example. If you bring self-service in, you need governance to explain to the business that they actually now have a responsibility. If you're going to contribute, you must be responsible what you contribute. If you don't, if you're not, you can't blame IT on all the outcomes. So you have to work through that. It's a difficult thing to do, but you have to work through the process to make people aware of it. Otherwise, your self-service is really doomed to failure. there's all sorts of little traps that lie in there if you don't get this right.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I know we went about 8 minutes over time. Apologize for that, but I had a great time chatting with you. Very insightful conversation about self-service BI, and thank you so much for joining the session, and thanks for those who've tuned in live. Just a quick reminder that you should follow Pomerol Partners. They're doing a lot of great things. This was a self-service BI session. Next week, we have a session on Safari, Bush Analytics, Safari industry. So that's going to be another session on Wednesday about the same time as now. So thank you guys again, and feel free to connect with them. They're very nice. They're going to answer all your questions. They promise. Feel free to reach out to them directly on LinkedIn. All right.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Kate.
Thank you, guys. Take care. Thank you, Kate.
Bye.
Bye.